Hello, my name is Alon Ilsar from Monash University Sensilab in Melbourne, Australia. I firstly wish to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people, traditional custodians of the land on which I record this presentation today, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. Today I'd like to share two stories of enchanting musical improvisation. The first centers around Alessio, a teenage boy living with leukodystrophy. The second around Violet, a 93-year-old woman living with advanced dementia. Alessio is part of the Safe and Sound community, which aims to encourage focused, active listening and music making for people living with disabilities and their families and carers. Improvisers bring their adapted homemade instruments to these one-on-one interactive home concerts, encouraging their co-improvisers to engage in music making as they please. I was invited by Safe and Sound's founder, Robbie Avenane, to bring my own custom instrument to one of these house concerts. I had developed the AirSticks, a gestural audiovisual instrument, for my own personal creative use to help me facilitate the improvisation of transparent and expressive real-time live electronic music. The instrument utilizes bespoke virtual reality gaming controllers and custom-built software that allows the creation of personalized mappings of movement to sound for specific performances. The AirSticks, like all digital musical instruments, or DMIs, are a blank slate. Gestures can be calibrated and mapped to any sound imaginable. Unlike a drum kit or piano, which have a rich history of repertoire and mastery, most DMIs have no legacy and hence can invite open curiosity, as there is no right or wrong way to play these instruments. With my background as a percussionist, most of the mappings I've created rely on a triggering system that uses the metaphor of a percussion instrument, allowing me to trigger sounds by striking through the air, a la air drumming. A large library of hundreds of different mappings has been created on the AirSticks for specific performances. One of the shortcomings of the AirSticks is that they provide no tactile or haptic feedback like on physical drums. Hence, the triggering system is something I've needed to learn to play over time. The controllers do feature several buttons, though, that I would often use to switch modes or turn features on and off. So when I brought the AirSticks to my first session with Alessio, I tweaked my library of mappings to allow him to press and hold a button to trigger the sound so that the instrument was more approachable. This is only the second time that Alessio played the AirSticks, here in a public music festival, in front of family, friends, and music lovers. That's his little brother who lives with cerebral palsy, egging him on and joining him in the improvisation from the audience. In our session at his home, I loaded up several mappings and returned to ones he preferred, occasionally customizing the mapping for him on the fly, moving sounds to different buttons that he felt more comfortable playing, or changing musical elements like tempo or pitch. He commentated on how much he enjoyed exploring the space around him for new sounds as he stretched outwards and upwards. He gravitated towards this noisy drum synth mapping used in this improvisation. Violet has only played the AirSticks once. She has mobility and often appears to be talking, but her words cannot be understood. It is not known whether she has any musical background. The AirSticks were introduced to Violet and other residents at their care facility in collaboration with dementia researcher and co-author of this paper, Gail, with the aim to explore to what extent the AirSticks could be used by people with advanced dementia for creative engagement. Violet was given an air harp mapping, a simple mapping that she could engage with by pressing the button on either controller to create a tone. She very quickly understood that the change of sound related to how she moved the controller. She began conducting and singing loudly. Eventually, I decided to join in as well. And as a seasoned improviser myself, it was a truly magical and spiritual moment of improvising with someone I had never met. The level of non-verbal communication that can be expressed in an improvisation is one of the greatest and most unexplainable elements of music making. Main contributions from these extraordinary moments of musical improvisation that we would like to share today. The first is that musical skill or practice is not required to bring profound musical improvisation experiences. And that the use of motion capture technology can help facilitate sound exploration through movement that is engaging, empowering, and invites curiosity. This allows people to set and strive towards their own personal goals as opposed to those of the therapist. This insight is a call to arms to adapt more DMIs used in professional personal creative practice into accessible digital musical instruments. Freed, in her comprehensive review of ADMI, also makes this call. She concludes with 4 key concepts for the success of an ADMI. We argue that by their very nature, DMIs are adaptable. Only minimal adaptability is needed to make gestural DMIs more accessible. In our case, we merely simplify the triggering system. We argue that, in fact, the most important of Freed's concepts is that of interdisciplinary teams, as they can help build a community of practice. It is through social practices that we come to understand, learn, and make meaning. In our research, this meaning comes from empowering people and communities through musicking. Musicking is to take part in any capacity in a musical performance, whether by performing or listening or dancing. From our research, we discovered that though making changes to software and hardware is important to us as designers and musicians, blurring lines between all these elements of musicking is the most important factor in making the AirSticks a more accessible instrument. Through the development of a community of practice of musicking, communication, both verbal and nonverbal, about people's personal goals and ambitions can emerge. To finish up, we do realize that the AirSticks, being a physical tool that is not readily available, is not as accessible as we would like it to be, especially during a pandemic where house visits or workshops at aged care facilities are off limits. Hence, we have been working on a smartphone version of the AirSticks, playing to the strengths of the onboard sensors, functionality, and availability of the device. So thank you for your time today, and feel free to connect to get a link to the app or find out more about our research.